You know that moment when your entire life implodes and you're standing there holding the pieces, wondering how everything went so spectacularly wrong? Yeah, that was me 3 months ago, standing in Harvard's admissions office with my acceptance letter crumpled in my shaking hand. I need to formally withdraw my enrollment, I told the bewildered counselor, my voice barely above a whisper. She blinked at me like I'd just announced I was giving up oxygen. Miss Chen, are you absolutely certain? Your academic record is exceptional. Exceptional. Right. 4.0 GPA. Perfect SAT scores, valedictorian. Early admission to Harvard with a partial scholarship. But apparently, being exceptional wasn't enough when your parents decided your mediocre twin sister needed the opportunities more than you did. Lily needs this more than you do, Maya, my mother had said just 2 weeks earlier, not even looking up from her tea. You're smart enough to succeed anywhere. She needs the networking, the prestige. The networking, the prestige. For the girl who barely scraped C's and only got into Westfield Private University because our parents donated a new science lab. We can only afford to send one of you to your dream school, Dad had added, like he was discussing the weather. Lily's already struggling with confidence. This could make or break her future. And just like that, my Harvard fund became Lily's Westfield Fund. 18 years of straight A's, academic awards, and sleepless nights meant nothing compared to my sister's people skills and need for a confidence boost. So there I was, watching my dreams die. In a sterile office while somewhere across the country, Lily was probably posting Instagram stories about her dorm room shopping spree. Fast forward to last Tuesday. I'm walking home from my shift at the campus bookstore because, yes, I ended up at the local community college like some kind of consolation prize, when I spot something glinting in the gutter. An antique pocket watch, the kind you see in old movies. Expensive looking, with intricate engravings and a heavy gold chain. I should have just walked past it. Should have minded my own business. But apparently, my luck was about to take a very weird turn. The moment my fingers touched that watch, the world shifted. Finally, said a voice beside me. Someone who can see me. I spun around to find an elderly man in a vintage suit standing there, looking as solid as anyone else, except for the minor detail that he was definitely, absolutely, 100% dead. Who the hell are you? I managed to squeak out. He smiled, tipping his hat like we were at some fancy 1920s party. Theodore Blackwood, and you, my dear, are about to help me get revenge on the bastard who murdered me. Okay, hold up, I said, still gripping the watch like a lifeline. Did you just say murdered? Because I'm really not equipped to deal with ghosts right now. I'm barely equipped to deal with being alive. Theodore chuckled, which was deeply unsettling coming from a dead guy. Trust me, child, I wouldn't have chosen you either. But beggars can't be choosers, and I've been dead for 38 years. 38. I stopped walking and stared at him. A few students passed by, chatting about some party, completely oblivious to my supernatural crisis. So you're saying only I can see you? The watch chooses its bearer, he said cryptically. And apparently, it chose someone with a grudge against family favoritism. That hit a little too close to home. How do you know about... I've been watching, waiting for the right person. Someone who understands what it's like to be overlooked, undervalued by the people who should support you most. His expression darkened. My brother Victor did the same thing to me that your parents did to you. I laughed bitterly. Unless your brother literally stole your college fund, I doubt it. He stole my company and my life. That shut me up pretty quickly. I founded Blackwood Technologies in 1982. Theodore continued as we reached my apartment building. Started in my garage, built it into a multi-million-dollar empire. Victor was always jealous, always the lesser brother. When I announced I was leaving everything to my son Daniel in my will, Victor decided he'd had enough of being second place. So he killed you. Poisoned my evening brandy with something that mimicked a heart attack. Then he forged a new will, destroyed the original, and convinced everyone I'd had a change of heart about Daniel's capabilities. Made it look like I thought my son was too irresponsible to run the company. I fumbled with my keys, mind racing. That's horrible. But why tell me? What can I possibly do about a 38-year-old murder? Theodore's eyes lit up with something that might have been hope. Because Daniel, my son, he's still fighting. He's spent decades trying to prove the company was stolen from him, but he doesn't have concrete evidence, I do. And in exchange for helping him, you'll pay for your Harvard education, full tuition, room and board, plus a generous stipend for your troubles. I nearly dropped the watch. You're serious? Dead serious, if you'll pardon the expression. My phone buzzed with a text from Lily. OMG, Maya, look at my new dorm setup, followed by 17 photos of a room that cost more than my entire year's tuition. Yeah, I was definitely interested. The next morning, I skipped my introduction to basic math class, the academic equivalent of watching paint dry, and headed to the library to research the Blackwood family. Theodore materialized in the chair across from me, earning a startled yelp from a nearby student who probably thought I was having some kind of breakdown. Shh, Theodore hissed. People will think you're crazy. People will think I'm crazy because I am crazy, I whispered back. I'm talking to a dead guy in the library. Focus, Maya. Look up the company history. I pulled up article after article about Blackwood Technologies. Theodore's death in 1987 was barely a footnote. Founder dies of heart attack at 49. But the company's trajectory afterward was fascinating. Under Victor's leadership, it had grown exponentially, but there were whispers of financial irregularities, shell companies, and suspicious acquisitions. Victor's been embezzling for decades, Theodore said, reading over my shoulder, using the company as his personal piggy bank while my son fights for scraps. I found a recent photo of Daniel Blackwood, mid-40s, tired eyes, but still carrying himself with the dignity of someone who refused to give up. The caption mentioned his ongoing legal battles to reclaim his father's legacy. He looks exhausted, I murmured. 38 years of fighting will do that to a person. But he's never stopped believing in the truth. My phone rang, interrupting my research. Mom's contact photo filled the screen, a family portrait where Lily and I are both smiling. But if you look closely, you can see the moment I realized the photographer was only focusing on her. Hi, Mom. Maya, sweetie. How are your classes going? The fake concern in her voice made my teeth clench. Fine, just fine. Good. Listen, Lily's having such a wonderful time at Westfield. She's already made so many connections. The networking opportunities there are just incredible. That's great, I said flatly. You know, maybe you should visit her sometime. See what you could have. She caught herself, but the damage was done. What I could have if I were more like her, I finished. Maya, that's not what I meant. Actually, Mom, I think it's exactly what you meant. But don't worry about me. I'm working on some pretty incredible opportunities of my own. I hung up before she could respond. Theodore was watching me with something that looked like understanding. Family is complicated. Family is a nightmare, I corrected. But you're right about one thing. I definitely understand being overlooked. Finding Daniel Blackwood turned out to be easier than expected. According to my research, he ran a small consulting firm downtown and regularly attended a weekly networking event at a hotel bar. Theodore coached me on my approach during the entire bus ride there. Remember, you're a journalism student researching family business dynasties. You picked Blackwood Technologies because of its interesting succession story. Got it. And if he asks why I'm really interested, tell him the truth, that you believe talented people deserve their rightful inheritance. The hotel bar was one of those places that screamed business casual, all leather chairs and dim lighting designed to make middle-aged executives feel important. I spotted Daniel immediately. He looked exactly like his photos, but somehow more worn down in person. I approached his table with what I hoped looked like journalistic confidence. Mr. Blackwood, I'm Maya Chen from the community college newspaper. I was wondering if I could ask you a few questions about your father's company. He looked up from his whiskey, and I saw Theodore's eyes looking back at me. What kind of questions? I'm writing a piece about family business succession, particularly cases where there were complications. Daniel's laugh was bitter. Complications, that's one way to put it. He gestured to the empty chair across from him. Sit, but I should warn you, it's not a happy story. The best stories usually aren't. As I sat down, Theodore appeared in the chair beside me, invisible to his son, but nodding encouragingly. So, Daniel said, what do you want to know about how my uncle stole my inheritance and convinced the world my father thought I was incompetent? The pain in his voice was raw, even after all these years. This wasn't just about money, it was about a son's relationship with his father's memory being systematically destroyed. I've read the public records, I said carefully. The will seems unusual. Your father left everything to your uncle instead of you, despite you being actively involved in the company. That's because it's not my father's will. Daniel's voice was low, controlled. Victor forged it. I've always known it, but proving it is another matter entirely. Theodore leaned forward excitedly, though of course Daniel couldn't see him. What makes you so certain? I asked. Daniel pulled out his phone and showed me a photo of the contested will. See the signature? My father was left-handed, but this signature clearly shows right-handed pen strokes. Plus, there are phrases in here that my father would never have used. Victor tried to mimic his writing style but couldn't mimic his vocabulary. I studied the image, my heart racing. This was exactly the kind of evidence Theodore had been talking about. Have you shown this to handwriting experts? 3 of them. But Victor has better lawyers, and the company has enough money to make problems disappear. Daniel finished his whiskey. Why are you really interested in this story, Maya? The question caught me off guard. I glanced at Theodore, who nodded encouragingly. Because I understand what it's like when family takes away something that should rightfully be yours, I said honestly. When they decide someone else deserves your opportunities more than you do. Something shifted in Daniel's expression. You're not just writing a fluff piece for the school newspaper, are you? No, I admitted. I'm not. So let me get this straight, Daniel said 20 minutes later, after I'd given him a carefully edited version of my story. You believe my father was murdered. You think you can help me prove the will was forged, and in exchange, you want help getting into Harvard? I know it sounds crazy. It sounds impossible. Maya, I've been fighting this battle for 38 years. What makes you think you can accomplish something I haven't? Theodore was practically bouncing in his invisible chair. Tell him about Mrs. Hayes. Right. During my research, I'd found references to Eleanor Hayes, Theodore's former secretary who'd worked at the company until 1990. What about Eleanor Hayes? I asked. Daniel's eyes widened. How do you know about Eleanor? She was your father's secretary, right? She might have seen something, known something about his real intentions. Eleanor quit 3 years after my father died. She always claimed she saw something suspicious the night he passed, but Victor discredited her. Said she was an unreliable witness with a drinking problem. Do you know where she is now? Rosewood Retirement Home, about an hour outside the city. But Maya, she's 78 years old. Even if she did see something, who's going to believe her now? Theodore was nodding vigorously. She saw Victor tampering with my brandy. She knows the truth. Sometimes the truth is worth believing, regardless of who tells it, I said. Daniel studied me for a long moment. You know what? Fine, I'll take you to see Eleanor, but I need to know what you're really getting out of this. Nobody helps someone fight a decades-old battle just out of the goodness of their heart. I thought about my parents, about Lily's Instagram stories, about sitting in Introduction to Basic Math while my dreams collected dust. I need to prove that I'm worth betting on, I said simply. Rosewood Retirement Home was one of those aggressively cheerful places that tried really hard to make dying look fun. Eleanor Hayes was in the sunroom, working on a crossword puzzle, and she looked up when Daniel introduced me. Maya Chen, she repeated, studying my face. You have honest eyes. I like that. Mrs. Hayes, I wanted to ask you about the night Theodore Blackwood died. Her expression immediately darkened. Nobody's asked me about that night in years. They all decided I was a crazy old drunk. What did you see? Daniel asked gently. Eleanor set down her puzzle. I was working late that night, finishing up some filing. Mr. Blackwood, Theodore, had asked me to stay because he wanted to finalize some documents the next morning. Around 9 o'clock, I heard voices in his office. Angry voices. Theodore appeared beside her chair, listening intently to his former secretary. Victor was there, Eleanor continued. He was yelling about the new will, about how Theodore was making a mistake, leaving everything to Daniel. I heard Theodore tell him the decision was final. And then, I prompted. Victor stormed out, but he came back about 20 minutes later. He was calmer, apologetic. Said he wanted to make amends, brought Theodore a drink from his private bar. Eleanor's hands trembled slightly. But I saw him put something in that glass. A little vial of clear liquid. Daniel leaned forward. You saw him poison my father? I saw him put something in that brandy, yes. But when I tried to tell the police, Victor said I'd been drinking myself that night, that I was confused and unreliable. He had security footage edited to make it look like I'd been stumbling around the office. Why didn't you keep fighting? I asked. Eleanor's laugh was bitter. Child, you don't fight Victor Blackwood and win. He made sure I couldn't get another job anywhere in the city. I had to move in with my sister in Florida just to survive. Theodore was practically vibrating with excitement. She's the witness we need. She saw everything. But I could see the problem immediately. A 78-year-old woman with a discredited testimony wasn't going to be enough to bring down Victor Blackwood, not after all these years. Mrs. Hayes, I said slowly, is there any chance you kept records from that time? Notes, documents, anything that might corroborate your story? She smiled slyly. Funny you should ask. I may be old, but I'm not stupid. I kept copies of everything, schedules, memos, even some of Theodore's personal files that Victor thought he'd destroyed. Daniel sat up straight. You have my father's files? Hidden in my storage unit for 38 years. I always hoped someday someone would believe me and want to see the truth. I looked at Theodore, who was grinning like he'd just won the lottery. Mrs. Hayes, I said, how would you feel about helping us take down Victor Blackwood? The storage unit was a treasure trove. Eleanor had kept everything. Theodore's real will, financial records showing Victor's embezzlement, even a small recording device that captured part of the argument on the night Theodore died. Your father was planning to expose Victor's illegal activities, Eleanor explained as we sorted through boxes of documents. Victor had been skimming money for years, using shell companies to hide the theft. Daniel held his father's real will with shaking hands. In clear, unmistakable handwriting, Theodore had left everything to his son, along with a note expressing his pride in Daniel's business acumen and integrity. All these years, Daniel whispered, I thought maybe he really did doubt me. He never doubted you, Eleanor said firmly. He was so proud of your work, always bragging about your ideas and your ethics. Theodore was beaming beside his son, tears, or the ghostly equivalent, streaming down his face. I was photographing every document when my phone exploded with notifications. Lily had posted a new Instagram story, this one featuring our parents visiting her at Westfield. They were all smiles, touring her campus, meeting her professors, gushing over her networking potential. The caption read, so grateful for parents who believe in investing in the right opportunities. #blessed #family #future CEO. You okay? Daniel asked, noticing my expression. Just family drama, I muttered, but Eleanor was watching me with sharp eyes. What kind of family drama? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Mom again. Maya, we need to talk. We're coming to pick you up for dinner. I'm busy, Mom. Too busy for family? This isn't like you, sweetie. Actually, it's exactly like me. You just never paid attention before. Maya Chen, that attitude is exactly why we... She stopped herself, but I knew where that sentence was going. Why you what, Mom? Why you gave my college fund to Lily? Why you decided she was worth investing in and I wasn't? That's not fair, Maya. We made a difficult decision based on what was best for both of you. What was best for both of us, or what was easiest for you. Eleanor was watching this conversation with growing interest. Maya, hang up the phone. Mom, I have to go. No, wait. I hung up and looked at Eleanor, who was smiling grimly. Let me guess, she said. Parents who play favorites? Something like that. Child, I've been around long enough to recognize family politics when I see them. And I've learned that sometimes the only way to win is to stop playing their game and start playing your own. Daniel was looking between us with confusion. Are you saying Maya's parents? I'm saying Maya understands what it's like to be underestimated by the people who should believe in her most, Eleanor said. And that's exactly the kind of person we need on our side. My phone buzzed with a text from Lily. Mom and Dad are freaking out. What did you say to them? I showed Theodore the message, and he nodded approvingly. Good, he said. Let them worry. You have bigger fish to fry. We spent the next 3 hours developing our strategy. The evidence was strong: the forged will, the financial records showing embezzlement, Eleanor's testimony, and the partial recording. But we needed to be smart about how we presented it. Victor has been covering his tracks for 38 years, Daniel said. He's not going to go down without a fight. Which is why we need to be strategic, I said. We can't just dump all this evidence and hope for the best. We need to force his hand, make him reveal himself. Theodore was pacing excitedly. The annual shareholders meeting is next month. Victor will be there, presenting his usual report about the company's success. That's perfect, Eleanor said. A public forum where he can't just make evidence disappear. Daniel looked skeptical. Maya, you don't understand how powerful Victor is. He has lawyers, connections, influence. If we tip our hand too early, then we make sure he doesn't see us coming, I interrupted. We let him think he's safe, and then we hit him with everything at once. My phone rang again. This time it was Dad. Maya, your mother is very upset. We're driving over to talk to you. Dad, I'm not at home. Then where are you? I looked at Daniel and Eleanor, both of whom were watching me with interest. I'm working on something important, something that's going to change my life. Maya, you're scaring us. This isn't like you. Maybe you never knew what I was really like, I said quietly. Maybe you were too busy focusing on Lily to notice. There was a long pause. We'll talk about this when we see you. No, Dad, we won't. Because I'm done having conversations where you and Mom decide what's best for me without actually listening to what I want. I hung up and turned back to my co-conspirators. Sorry about that. Family issues. Eleanor chuckled. Child, you've got steel in your spine. I like that. Daniel was still looking worried. Maya, are you sure you want to do this? Taking on Victor Blackwood isn't a game. He's destroyed people for less. I thought about my parents driving across town to talk sense into me, about Lily's Instagram posts, about sitting in remedial math classes while my Harvard acceptance letter gathered dust in my drawer. I'm sure, I said. Besides, what's the worst that could happen? I'm already living my worst-case scenario. Theodore appeared beside me, smiling proudly. That's my girl. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Daniel arranged for me to meet with his daughter, Sophia, who turned out to be surprisingly helpful despite initially being suspicious of me. You're telling me that some random college student just happened to stumble onto evidence about my grandfather's murder? Sophia said when Daniel first introduced us at a coffee shop near her university. I know it sounds weird. It sounds impossible. Sophia was studying me with dark eyes that reminded me eerily of Theodore. What's your real angle here? Daniel sighed. Sophia, Maya has been incredibly helpful. Dad, you've been fighting this battle my entire life. Suddenly some teenager shows up with magic evidence and you just trust her? I understood her skepticism. If I were in her position, I'd be suspicious too. Look, I said, I get why you don't trust me, but I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to look at the evidence and decide for yourself. I pulled out copies of the documents Eleanor had provided. The real will, the financial records, the recording transcripts. Sophia studied them for several minutes, her expression growing more serious with each page. This handwriting analysis, she said slowly. Dad, have you seen this? Maya found a handwriting expert who was willing to compare the signatures. The forged will is definitely not your grandfather's writing. Sophia looked up at me with new respect. How did you afford a handwriting expert? I didn't. I convinced Professor Martinez from the community college to look at it as part of a class project on document authenticity. You're resourceful, Sophia admitted. I'll give you that. Theodore appeared beside his granddaughter, beaming with pride. She's brilliant, just like you. There's something else, I said, pulling out my phone. I've been researching Victor's recent activities. He's planning to sell the company to some overseas investors next month, right after the shareholders meeting. Daniel's face went pale. He's what? It's all very quiet, very discreet. But if he sells, all this evidence becomes meaningless. The new owners won't care about a 38-year-old murder, and Victor walks away with hundreds of millions of dollars. Sophia was scrolling through the research on my phone. Maya, this is incredible detective work. Where did you learn to do this? YouTube, mostly, and spite. Spite is a powerful motivator. She laughed despite herself. Okay, I'm convinced. What do you need from me? Access, I said simply. You're Theodore's granddaughter. You have a right to attend the shareholders meeting and you can get us in. And then what? I smiled, feeling more confident than I had in months. Then we give Victor Blackwood the surprise of his life. Of course, my parents chose that moment to ambush me at the coffee shop. Maya, Mom's voice cut through the ambient chatter as she and Dad marched over to our table. We've been looking everywhere for you. I closed my laptop quickly, but not before Sophia had seen the family drama approaching. Mom, Dad, this really isn't a good time. It's the perfect time, Dad said, pulling up a chair uninvited. We need to discuss this phase you're going through. Phase? I repeated. You think this is a phase? Mom sat down next to Dad, creating a united front. Sweetie, we understand you're upset about the college situation, but dropping out of classes and running around the city with strangers? I haven't dropped out of anything, I said through clenched teeth. And these aren't strangers, they're colleagues. Colleagues? Dad looked at Daniel and Sophia with obvious skepticism. Maya, you're 18 years old. You don't have colleagues. Sophia raised an eyebrow. Actually, Maya has been instrumental in our ongoing legal case. She's shown remarkable research skills and business acumen. Mom blinked in surprise. Legal case? Daniel leaned forward. Your daughter has been helping my family recover stolen assets worth several $1,000,000. The silence that followed was deafening. Several million, Mom stammered. That's impossible, Dad said. Maya is just a community college student. Maya is brilliant, Sophia said firmly. She's identified evidence that legal experts missed for decades. I watched my parents' faces cycle through confusion, disbelief, and something that might have been the beginning of respect. Maya, Mom said slowly, is this why you've been so secretive lately? Among other reasons, I said. What other reasons? Dad asked. I looked at my parents, really looked at them, and realized that this was my moment. I could keep playing their game, accepting their limitations, letting them define my worth. Or I could show them exactly who I really was. The other reason is that I'm transferring to Harvard next semester, I said calmly. Mom nearly choked on her coffee. You're what? Harvard. You know, that school you told me I didn't need to attend because I was smart enough to succeed anywhere? Maya, we've been through this. No, Mom, you went through it. You made a decision about my life without asking what I wanted or considering what I was capable of achieving on my own. Dad was shaking his head. Maya, be realistic. We can't afford... I'm not asking you to afford anything, I interrupted. I'm handling my own finances, thanks. Sophia was watching this exchange with fascination. Daniel looked uncomfortable but impressed. How? Mom asked weakly. I smiled, feeling Theodore's presence beside me. Let's just say I'm very good at finding opportunities that other people overlook. The next day, I got a call from Eleanor that changed everything. Maya, dear, I found something else in my storage unit, something I forgot I had. She sounded excited, almost giddy, which was unusual for Eleanor's typically reserved demeanor. What kind of something? Come see for yourself, and bring Daniel and that lovely granddaughter of his. An hour later, we were back at the storage facility, where Eleanor was holding what looked like an ordinary manila folder. I was going through some of Theodore's personal effects that I saved, she explained, and I found this tucked inside his desk blotter. She opened the folder to reveal a handwritten letter dated 3 days before Theodore's death. Read it out loud, Theodore urged, appearing beside me. My dearest Daniel, I began, then paused. Should I really be reading this? It's personal. Read it, Daniel said quietly. My dearest Daniel, if you are reading this letter, then my suspicions about Victor have proven correct, and I am no longer alive to protect you or the company. I have been documenting his illegal activities for months, and I believe he means to harm me before I can expose him. I want you to know that every decision I have made has been with your best interests at heart. You are twice the businessman Victor could ever be, and I have never been prouder of anyone in my life. The real will is hidden in my safe deposit box at First National Bank, along with evidence of Victor's embezzlement. The box number is 1247, and Eleanor has the key. I love you, son. Make me proud. Your father, Theodore Blackwood. The silence that followed was profound. Daniel was crying openly. He knew. He knew Victor was going to kill him, and he still tried to protect me. Eleanor pulled out an ornate key from her purse. I've been carrying this for 38 years, waiting for the right moment. Sophia was staring at the letter. The safe deposit box. If the original will is there, then we have ironclad proof, I finished. Victor can't argue with a document that's been locked in a bank vault for 38 years. Theodore was practically glowing. Now we have everything we need. There's just one problem, Daniel said, wiping his eyes. The bank probably closed that account decades ago when the fees weren't paid. Eleanor smiled mysteriously. Actually, I've been paying the fees. Every year for 38 years, I charged them to a consulting account I set up under a different name. We all stared at her. Eleanor, I said slowly, you've been planning this for 38 years? I've been hoping for 38 years, she corrected. Planning started the day you walked into my life, dear. First National Bank still had the same marble floors and imposing columns it had probably featured since the 1950s. Eleanor walked up to the safe deposit box counter like she owned the place. I need to access box 1247, she told the clerk, producing Theodore's letter and the key. The young clerk looked confused. Ma'am, this account hasn't been accessed since 1987. Are you sure you have the right? I'm quite sure, Eleanor said firmly. The account holder was Theodore Blackwood, and I'm authorized to access it as per his written instructions. 20 minutes of bureaucratic confusion later, we were finally escorted to the vault. Eleanor inserted her key, and the box slid open to reveal a treasure trove of documents. The original will was right on top, exactly as Theodore had described. But there was more. Financial records showing decades of Victor's embezzlement, correspondence with lawyers about Victor's suspicious activities, even a few audio recordings on old cassette tapes. My God, Daniel whispered, holding his father's real will. It's all here. Sophia was examining the financial documents. Look at this. Victor's been stealing from the company since the early 1980s. He's embezzled over $50 million. And this, I said, holding up a thick folder, looks like evidence that Victor had been threatening other employees who questioned his activities. Theodore appeared beside us, tears streaming down his ghostly face. I knew someone would find this eventually. I just never imagined it would take 38 years. Eleanor was smiling with satisfaction. I told you I kept everything for a reason. As we photographed the documents, my phone buzzed with yet another text from Lily. Where have you been? Mom and Dad are acting weird, and they won't tell me why. I showed the message to Sophia, who laughed. Your twin sister. The golden child, I confirmed. The one they chose to invest in instead of me. Their loss, Sophia said simply. You're probably the most determined person I've ever met. Daniel was studying the audio recordings. These are labeled Victor Conversations Insurance. Maya, do you think these might be recordings of Victor admitting to the murder? I finished. Only one way to find out. We took the cassette tapes to Daniel's office, where he still had an old player from the 1980s. The first few recordings were mundane business conversations, but the fourth tape made us all freeze. Victor's voice was clear and unmistakable. Theodore, you sanctimonious bastard, you think you can just cut me out after everything I've done for this company? Then Theodore's voice, calm but firm. Victor, I know about the embezzlement. I know about the forged contracts, the shell companies, all of it. I've documented everything. You have no proof. I have more proof than I need. You're out, Victor. I'm calling the police tomorrow morning. There was a long pause, then Victor's voice, eerily calm. No, brother, you're not. The recording continued for another few minutes, capturing Victor's detailed confession about his plans to poison Theodore and forge the will. He even mentioned Eleanor as a potential problem that would need to be handled. He confessed to everything, Sophia breathed.